Hello and welcome back to the Sheva Secrets Nach or Nach series. In today's video, we will learn rule number 9, the sandwich rule, when there is a Sheva between a Tam and a Ma'amid. Let's dive in. For this rule, we're going to speak a little bit about Ta'amim. If someone looks at a Chumash, at a Torah, at a Tanakh, what they'll notice is there are letters, there are vowels, the nikudot, and there are also the cantillation or the ta'amim, the ta'amim mikra, the signs that tell you how to read the word when you're reading it in the Bet Knesset, but also it's teaching you the proper syntax of how to pronounce each word. And so it's not just about singing, it's not just about the chazan or the cantor, it's about how to read each word properly. And sometimes this word, when it has a sheva, you can use the ta'amim to help you to determine whether the sheva is a sheva na or a sheva nach, which means the rules that we've learned so far will be helpful and useful and will all apply. But this rule is another way of approaching the same rules. There will be times that instead of having to remember which one is a tenuah gedolah and a tenuah ketana, as we learned in the previous rule, you might be able to look at the ta'amim. So sometimes by looking at a sheva, looking what's before it and looking what's after it, not the letters, not the vowels, but the ta'amim, you'll be able to determine whether it's a sheva na or a sheva nach. Which introduces rule number 9. Rule 9, or what we call the sandwich rule. If a letter with a sheva has a ta'am, which is one of the ta'amim, and or a ma'amid, which is a little line, which I'll show you an example, immediately before it and after it, the sheva is treated as a sheva na. It's pronounced. And that's why we call it a sandwich. One more time. If you have a letter with a sheva, and the letters immediately before it and immediately after it both have a tam and or a ma'amid, that sheva that's in the middle of the sandwich is going to be a sheva na, and it's pronounced. So let's look at an example to see how to spot it. Look at the word on the screen. There's a bet with a dagesh at the beginning of the word. That we know from our first rule, sheva, and the first letter of the word is a sheva na. You see there is a sheva in the middle of the word. That's a resh. The resh has a sheva underneath it. Okay, sheva in the middle of the word. Is that a sheva na or a sheva nach? Based on the previous rules that we know, we would say the letter before it has a kamatz. Is that a tenuah gedolah or a tenuah ketana? So that is a tenuah gedolah. That is a kamatz that's pronounced as ah. Now, because that's a tenuah gedolah, the rule tells us that the resh is going to have a sheva na, and it'll be pronounced. Now, how do I know that's a tenuah gedolah? I can tell it's a tenuah gedolah because there's a little line underneath it. That line is called a ma'amid. So that ma'amid next to the kamatz is really telling me that that kamatz is a tenuah gedolah. So you see, remember how we said there's two types of kamatz, and one is a kamatz gadol, or a tenuah gedolah, and one is a kamatz katan, which is a tenuah katana, and it's going to matter? Well, here we go. If you see that line next to that kamatz, that ma'amid, you know that is a tenuah gedolah. So from the previous rule, you would know that, well, it's following a tenuah gedolah. But let's say you are going to forget about that rule for a moment. Here, the new rule that we're talking about here is the being sandwiched. That resh, which has a sheva, the letter right before it, the bet, has a ma'amid underneath it. That's the line. The letter right after it, that aleph, has an atnach. You see, it's that little symbol that looks like a horseshoe. That's like an upside down U with a stick going up. That's called an atnach. And so since you have a ma'amid and a shiva, a ma'amid and a tam, the atnach, sandwiching the resh, which has a sheva underneath it, that is a sheva na. Now, obviously, this video series, it would be beyond the scope to explain what all of the ta'amim are and all of the functions of the ta'amim. But suffice it to say that you see a resh in the middle of the word. There is a ma'amid, which is a line. The letter right before it. There is a tam right after it, which in this case the tam is the Nach, so that is a Sheva Na. Here are three examples that I'm taking from the Torah. This is from Parashat Bereshit. The first line is when Hashem is telling Adam and Eve not to eat from the fruits, from the certain fruits of the Gan Eden. If you look at that word, the second word, let's see how we read it. Lo tochelu. Now it happens to be that right before that chaf, there is an aleph, but that aleph is silent. So I'm giving this as an example that when you have that silent aleph, there is no vowel for that aleph. The word is not lo te'a or te'o. That aleph has no vowel symbol to it. So it's actually a silent letter, and it can be ignored. I'm starting with a more of a complex example, but you can ignore that aleph. So now I look at that chaf. The letter right before it is a tav. The tav has a ma'amid underneath it. Ma'amid before. Then I look at the next letter, which is the lamed. There's a zakef katan up there. Those two dots above it, that's a tam. So you have this chaf that is sandwiched between a ma'amid and a tam. It's a sheva na, tochelu. So that word there is going to be tochelu. Let's look at the second example. This word, you can see that you have a daled with a sheva underneath it. The letter before the daled is a yud. That yud has a ta'am. It's called a shofar holech. It's that little right angle underneath it. And the letter right after the daled is an ayin. An ayin has a zakef katon right above it. Those two dots on top. So now you have a letter with a sheva. There's a ta'am before and a ta'am after. Sandwich rule, that's the sheva na. The word is pronounced vayede'u. And then the last example is an example from in the Shema Yisrael of V'haya, the second paragraph. Let's look at it. That first word, there's a mem with a dagesh in the middle. The letter before the mem, the shin, has a ma'amid as the line. The letter after the mem, the resh, has a shofar holech, that right angle, that's a tam. You have a letter that's sandwiched between a ma'amid and a tam, that is going to be a shevana, and that is pronounced as hisham meru lachem. Now, all three of these examples, if you know the rule of tenuah gedolah, tenuah katana, you would arrive at the same conclusion. Because in the first example of tochelu, that is a cholam is a tenuah gedolah, sheva after tenuah gedolah is a shevana. In the second word, that is a tseret is a tenuah gedolah, sheva after tenuah gedolah is a shevana. And in the third example, that hishameru, that shin, has a kamatz gadol underneath it, which is a tenuah gedolah. Sheva after tenuah gedolah is a shevana. So you would arrive at the same rule, but the thing is, you don't need to remember which one is which, because all you do is, I see the sheva, I see it's sandwiched between a ma'amid and a tam. I'm not gonna have to think through which one is a tenuah gedolah, which one is a tenuah ketana. I know it's a shevana. Okay, so here are two examples that I'd like for you to try. These are two words from the Torah. Please pause and try for yourself. Hopefully you got a chance to try it on your own. The first one is talking about Moshe Rabbeinu's children's names. And his first son, the Torah says, Shem Ha'ehad, the name of one is Gereshom. Gereshom. Look at the Gimel. Underneath the Gimel, there's a Ma'amid. So we're looking at the Sheva underneath the Resh. The letter before the Resh is a Gimel with a Ma'amid. The letter after the resh is a shin that has a zakef katon, those two dots on top. You have a letter that is sandwiched between a ma'amid and a tam. Gereshom. Similar to the word that I gave in the last video of gereshon, same structure because it's following a tenuah gedolah, but we're not talking about the tenuah gedolah rule, we're talking about the sandwich rule. Example number 2, once again, we're looking at the tzadi. The tzadi has a sheva underneath it. Well, let's look at it. The letter before has a kamatz. The kamatz has a ma'arich. And the aleph that's coming after it has a tevir. So now this is sandwiched between two ta'amim. A letter with a sheva that is sandwiched immediately between two ta'amim, or a ma'amid and a tam. Sheva na, that word is going to be yatse'u. Okay, this list, Baruch Hashem, is growing. Let's go through it quickly to remind ourselves our rule bank. Rule number 1, a sheva at the beginning of the word is a sheva na. Rule number 2, a sheva with a dagesh in it is a sheva na. Rule number 3, if you have two shevas, the first is a sheva nach, the second is a sheva na. Rule number 4, a Sheva at the end of the word is a Sheva Nach. Rule number 5, if you have a letter that's a twin letter, it comes up twice, and there's a Sheva underneath the first one, Sheva Na. Rule number 6, a Sheva underneath one of the silent letters is going to be silent, as a Sheva Nach. Rule number 7, the default rule is that a Sheva in the middle of the word will be Sheva Nach, and the additional rule that goes together with that is rule number 8. It's only a Sheva Nach in the middle of the word if it's following a Tenua Ketana. But if it were to follow a Tenua Gidola, it's actually a Sheva Na. And rule number 9, which is all connected to the last rules of the Tenua Gidola, is called a sandwich rule. A Sheva that is between a Ma'amid and a Tam, or a Tam and a Tam, is going to be a Sheva Na. I understand that for many of you, this is going to be difficult because you may not be so sensitive and so clear with what the ta'amim are. That is a little bit out of the scope of this video to explain what all the ta'amim are. But what I encourage you to do is, if it's something that you haven't focused on, open the Chumash, open the Torah, look and pay attention to those ta'amim, and see how those ta'amim are not there just for musical notes alone. It's also teaching you how to read the words and pronounce them correctly. They help with giving meaning to the text as well. In our next video, really, we're going to learn our last rule. This is going to be rule number 10, which is the last rule for this series. It's called the Vav HaChibur. When there is a Vav at the beginning of the word, followed by a Sheva, how do we read it? As always, if you have any questions, feel free to put them in the questions below. And as we're coming to a close of this series, please let me know if there's additional work or additional videos to this series that you would like to see. I would be happy to always add something after the fact. So please let me know. See you next time.